This video was made without the use of generative AI. The Slate Truck. Affordable electric vehicle, 25K, crank windows, no infotainment, and part of an American reindustrialization project by a former Amazon executive. Watch my previous video for more on that last bit. I can't say that I'm one of the lucky folks who's had a chance to drive a Slate Truck prototype. I'd recommend the excellent journalists at the Autopian for that. But, on paper, my natural habitat, I've been obsessed with the Slate, and one reason is that it looks to be an affordable and fun-to-drive vehicle. For lack of starters, it's electric, and for once, an electric vehicle isn't a self-driving car. It's a car you drive yourself. Slate's car enthusiast leadership has put some emphasis on that. It's PR, but it's still making a claim about what they value. A car you're meant to drive feels more radical than it should. Electric cars tend to downplay the driver by focusing on technology that's supposed to replace them, and are usually sold as either premium or economy. I don't know why the Bolt and Leaf are front-wheel drive. It's a shame, because electric cars are perfect for affordable performance. It means that driving for fun isn't a waste of gas. If you charge at home and go driving on your days off, you're saving both money and time refueling, too. Smiles per gallon is a nice idea, but you know what's better? Money. And of course, electric cars have excellent driving properties, like acceleration. Depending on what you expect, the Slate's 180 horsepower and 0 to 60 time of 8 seconds may sound unimpressive. However, EV acceleration is about more than instant torque and crazy 0 to 60 times. It's about always having access to power. 0 to 60 is measuring a launch where the car is accelerating in a continuous, optimal way. In practical driving, you're cruising and changing speed to match the road or traffic. An internal combustion engine can only deliver optimal power within a narrow range of operating speeds. They need a transmission that shifts gear ratios to match the optimal range of the engine to the car's speed of travel. You also spend most of your time shifted away from power because engines are efficient at a different range of speeds than they are powerful. When you put your foot down in a car with an engine, there's a delay for shifting, delay for overcoming vacuum or spooling a turbo, because engines are air pumps, an extra delay for emissions because rapidly opening the throttle body can be bad for that. Then the engine starts revving up. What it means in practice is that the natural neural network driving your car learns that power is something you have to wait for. That feels slow, especially if you just turned onto a 25-30 mile per hour road and a matte black BMW is rapidly approaching at twice the speed limit. It's a matter of latency and feel rather than peak power. With an electric car, none of this is a problem. You push the pedal, a number goes up in the computer, and more electricity goes into the motor. You're talking almost directly to the motor, and the power happens when you tell it to. That is electric acceleration. It's minimal latency and direct control. Many of the benefits of electric power aren't about the power at all, but how they change the properties of the vehicle as a whole. For example, weight distribution and which wheels are driven. Engines are heavy. Almost all modern cars have their engine in the front mounted transversely, that is, sideways, and high up. This makes them nose-heavy and means that they're almost all front-wheel drive. A drive shaft to the rear wheels hurts fuel economy and doesn't work well with a transverse motor. But so many cars are all-wheel drive now. No, they're front-wheel drive, with a system that sometimes sends power to the rear wheels when the front ones have bad grip. This is a bit of a car nerd argument, but that's bad fake all-wheel drive. I'm sure it actually works fine, but most all-wheel drive cars primarily drive the front wheels. All other things being equal, it's best to drive the rear wheels, as many sports cars and trucks do. In a typical front-heavy car, it might be easier to start moving with the front wheels, but you immediately lose that traction. Once you start moving, the car transfers weight and grip to the rear wheels, which means that your front wheels can slip kind of uncomfortably. Which is probably why people believe they need all-wheel drive. Their only comparison is front-wheel drive. This is also why cars have larger, more powerful brakes in front. The opposite happens when they slow down, so all the deceleration power is in front. Rear-wheel drive also leaves the front wheels free to use all of their grip on steering. Without the packaging restrictions of an engine, EVs usually drive their rear wheels. There's no need for a drive shaft, the motor is just mounted in the back. EVs tend to be heavy, but the weight is all in the battery pack, and that's usually put under the vehicle. This gives electric vehicles an ideal center of mass, low and balanced instead of high and front-heavy. This is really good for handling and for safety since they're less likely to roll or flip. Naturally, this applies to the Slate Truck. It has a rear motor and a balanced 50-50 weight distribution, which is why it doesn't need all-wheel drive. There's no point driving the front wheels. People say, I need all-wheel drive because I go uphill both ways in the snow. If the difference between being stationary and moving is the extra front grip on a vehicle without a forward weight bias, I would be more worried about stopping and steering than starting. Look, if you subscribe to the idea that you need all-wheel drive, I can't tell you what to like. Still, I can share that Slate leadership has commented teasing a possible all-wheel drive version of the truck in the future. The platform supports it, but you'd be losing range and front volume while gaining cost and weight. I don't see the point. But enough about the vehicle's weight distribution and on to what's distributing it: the suspension. The Slate Truck has McPherson struts in front, simple, affordable, perfectly good independent suspension. But it's a truck, and that means a solid rear axle. A weird one. It's something called a DD on tube, which I'm definitely saying wrong, where the solid axle that connects the wheels doesn't drive them. Compared to other solid axle designs, this keeps the weight of the motor and differential from being attached to the wheels as unsprung mass. This is much better for comfort and performance for physics reasons. The Autopian's David Tracy got to drive the Slate down a road that looked to be the victim of a severe earthquake, with a sedan in front weaving between potholes. The Slate handled it, and I quote, confidently, not too soft, not too stiff. Hey, an affordable car had better be able to handle affordable roads. One of my favorite things about the Slate is actually that it has relatively small wheels and tires with sidewall instead of big wheels and low-profile tires. Maybe because it's a truck, but it's really good for comfort, range, and durability. The Slate's standard tire measurements are 245, 65, 17. 245 is the tread width, 65 is the aspect ratio or profile, and 17 is the wheel size. If you don't know what tire aspect ratio or profile is, Discount Tire's website has a good explanation. I actually worked there a while before the Great Pandini happened. Most modern cars have large wheels and thin, low-profile tires. They have a sporty look and a firmer, more responsive feel to them. Personally, I think it's compensating for cars that are otherwise boring. It adds a sharp and lean element to the bulky, high-riding crossovers that replaced everything fun. The Slate doesn't need that because its rear motor and weight distribution should already provide that sharpness. The problem with low-profile tires is that they sacrifice comfort, durability, and poor weather performance. They're more expensive, wear out faster, and can't absorb impacts from potholes or debris, which can damage both your wheels and the car they're attached to. They're especially bad for electric cars, since they increase road noise in otherwise quiet vehicles and come with bigger wheels that hurt range. Since bigger wheels are a status symbol, this means high-trim electric cars often lose range compared to the cheap versions. Slate Auto's trim-free customization makes 20-inch wheels an independent option rather than a class signifier. Slate's options aside, wheels and tires already have standard dimensions, so you should be able to put on anything so long as it fits and has the right bolt pattern. Personally, I wonder about going lighter and maybe narrower. 245 is a pretty broad tread width. With Slate's focus on DIY, it's also notable that low-profile tires can be much harder to mount without special tools. As I remember, some of them still kinda suck with the special tools. There's no doubt in my mind that the Slate is going to be awesome to drive. I won't pretend it's perfect, though. In the words of Colin Chapman, simplify and add lightness. Well, Slate isn't making a sports car, so while they did a lot of simplifying, they ended up adding weight. At the original announcement, it was meant to weigh 3,600 pounds, and now it's 4,048. It was relatively lightweight compared to contemporary electric SUVs and even sedans. At least it's still lighter than the new Nissan Leaf. Why? Lithium ferrophosphate is why. That is, LFP. Switching battery chemistry lets Slate go from offering 150 miles standard and 240 extended with an unknown price increase to a single 205-mile configuration while supposedly saving money. It was definitely the right choice. LFP cells are cheaper, last longer, and are better at handling 100% charge than the NMC cells that Slate was using before. I've also seen speculation that their cooler thermals are what allowed Slate to double their tow rating and finally delete the Ford Maverick's truck number advantages. However, LFP cells have a lower energy and power density than NMC cells. That raised the weight, and the lower voltage reduced the motor output from 200 horsepower to 180. It didn't change the 0 to 60, so it probably only affected power at high speeds, or Slate changed the gearing. It's often noted that the new battery wouldn't have met the sourcing requirements for the federal EV tax credit. While the company that makes the new cells is Chinese, the factory is in the US and even closer to where the Slate was made than it was before. So rumors of a Chinese battery on a made-in-the-USA vehicle are only partly true. Another less than ideal thing is that, ultimately, the Slate is a truck. The usual disadvantages like a front-heavy unloaded weight distribution aren't all present, but it means that the Slate is far from sporty in profile. It has a particularly upright cab design and a total height of 68 inches, presumably to reduce demand for the 1-inch lowering option. A tall cab is good for seeing and being seen, and it makes sure that tall people fit comfortably. It's more aerodynamic than it looks too. But it still means more drag, so you'll face more air resistance at high speeds. Top speed is currently supposed to be 90, not sure what limits that. It's probably limited electronically or by gearing rather than aerodynamics or power. The high profile also means the experience is probably more sitting on than in. I drive a hatchback, but I learned to drive in a minivan, and I do not miss the feeling of a larger vehicle or sitting high. Overall, I think Slate was good about making the right compromises, and making a sporty little car wasn't their actual goal. Anything resembling that is a happy accident, or a bonus to designers who made a car that they'd want themselves. The Slate is just so close to perfect for me that I get a bit greedy. What if it was perfect? Something with the same ideas behind it that was more low and streamlined. It's fun to think about, and that's one of the best things about Slate, is that they made things fun again. I was interested in electric cars since the Model 3 was brand new, but eventually they just made me sad, partly because they were all expensive crossovers, but also because they put forth a certain idea of the future. They promised to take driving away from us and put technology in the spotlight. I remember in a video interview, people from Slate were talking about their market research. They found that the tech on modern EVs made people feel boxed out from any customization, and that captured some of my feelings perfectly. Slate Auto revived my interest in cars years after it went cold and dead, and they're still making the only new car I'd ever consider buying. I'm excited to see what Slate is making. I'm even more excited to think about what they make next.